Hello everybody, happy belated Thanksgiving. I hope you had a great meal with your family, and if you were able to do it keto, good for you. Today I'm going to teach you how to do something called stuffed chicken breast margarita. It has cream cheese, garlic, fresh basil, sun-dried tomatoes, I'm trying to think what else, a little tomato paste, some chicken stock. It's a really great thing. So let's get started and I'll teach you how to make it. For this recipe, you're gonna need 2 chicken breasts that we're gonna slice in half, and I'll show you how to do that. A 1/3 cup of fresh chopped basil, 4 ounces of softened cream cheese, so just room temperature cream cheese, a 1/2 jar, 7-ounce jar of julienne sun-dried tomatoes in oil, packed in good quality oil. 4 cloves of minced garlic, salt and pepper to taste, a little tomato paste. I highly recommend getting the tubes, and I'll show you what those look like in a little bit, and a 1/2 to 1 cup of chicken stock. And I like to do this is a 1-pot meal, so we're gonna do it all in my cast iron skillet, and it's gonna go right from stovetop into the oven. It's great. I'll show you how to do it. The other thing you're gonna need is like a pounding mallet for pounding out the meat, because we're gonna pound out those chicken breasts and make them really, really flat. All right, let's get started. All right, the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna pound out the chicken breasts. But before we do that, I have rinsed them off and dried them. And we're doing 3 chicken breasts in this recipe, so I'm gonna be bumping up the measurements just a little bit. I know I said 2 chicken breasts before, but my package had 3, so we're just gonna do 3. You can use any sort of large knife that you want to. There's this size. There's a big chef's knife, and my favorite knife happens to be my Sanduku knife right here. And if I can make a little plug for the AccuSharp knife sharpener, this thing is so great. It keeps my knives really sharp, and I can't say enough good things about it. You basically turn your knife upside down, and there's a little notch right here, and you just run it over the top of the blade a couple of times, just like that. And I do that before every use, and it keeps my knife crazy sharp, really nice and sharp. So I am not making any money off of this. I'm not sponsored by them at all, but it's a great knife sharpener, and I believe you can find it just about anywhere. So highly recommend getting one of those. I think it's anywhere from $9 to $15. So with our chicken breast, we're gonna want to basically fillet them in half. And you can buy them already cut in half. I've seen them before, but this is a great skill to have. If you wanna butterfly your chicken and stuff it all together, make it nice and big, or if you're gonna do what we're gonna do, which is slice them in half and then pound them out, you really wanna know how to do this well. Okay, another little plug. So these little cutting boards are fantastic. I found them at Walmart, also not sponsored by Walmart. But what I love about them is I can go from meat to vegetables or whatever. They come in a 3-pack, so I can cut my meat up and put this in the sink and get another cutting board and do all my veg on them. And I'm not having to constantly clean my cutting board in between. I also like it because it's got a little bit of thickness to it. It's stiff but still pliable. Those cutting boards that are really thin, that are like red and blue and green or whatever, I find that those, they wear out really quickly. And because they're so thin, I'm always worried about whether or not they're gonna give out eventually and I'm gonna cut through onto my countertop. So really like these, they clean up well, you can bleach them. And like I said, they come in a 3-pack. They're like a couple bucks, I don't know, they're really inexpensive. The other thing I like to do is put a wet washcloth or kitchen towel down under my cutting board so it doesn't move. It's important that it's wet so that it doesn't move. And I like that it's a little bit bigger than my cutting board so that if anything gets off, it goes onto the washcloth and it doesn't get onto my countertop. So my countertop stays a little bit cleaner. So let's get to the chicken. Here's our nice piece of chicken. Now I'm left-handed, so if you have to adjust for right-handed people, that's fine. But I like to start if you look at this chicken breast, there's this part right here. You can see that it's kind of straighter on this side and it's a little bit bumpier on this side. It's just a preference, but I like to cut from that straight side right there. And all you're gonna do is hold with your palm down and find your middle point on this breast. And I want you to just gently slice through it as best you can. I'm gonna turn it now so I can get it all the way down this side. And then I like to actually just pull it up like this, just to make sure I get it all the way through evenly. And now I've got my 2 pieces of chicken that I can pound flat, okay? If it was going to just be butterflied, then I wouldn't have cut through the whole side. I would have left part of that attached. This right here, if you ever buy chicken tenders, this is the tender right here. It's the same as the filet mignon on beef right there. So that's your tender if you ever buy just the tenders from the grocery store. All right, so let's do it again. And if you've got a little bit of tissue or fat, or sometimes even there might be a little bit of bone or rib attached, you can just kind of cut that off. So important to have a really sharp knife for this. And we're just gonna slice it in half. Just take the knife around, come through. There's another way to do it, where you just leave your hand on it, okay? So there's 2 more. And here's our last one. Show you one more time. I just came through the top. I'm keeping my hand on. Come all the way through. So you can use either technique, all right? And there we go. So let's move on to pounding it out. So now I'm done with this. I can put it over in the sink and move on to the next thing. All right, I've got my mallet. There's a couple different kinds of meat mallets. There's ones that are round like this with a little knob on the top that you can use like this. I find that that's a little bit harder on my hands. If you have a little arthritis or a little bit weaker hands, then that might be a little bit harder to use. I like this one because it really gives me leverage. I can really pound out with this and it goes very quickly. I find the other one takes a little bit more time. I have no idea how much these cost. I've had this, I don't know, for 25, 30 years. So one and done with a purchase for a mallet. It's got the meat tenderizer on one side and the flat side on the other for pounding out. So this is the side we're gonna be using. I've taken some plastic wrap and put it out on the counter. I'm gonna take a piece of chicken that I've already filleted out and just lay it out like that. And then take another piece of plastic wrap and just put it over the top. And what's great about this is you can buy fresh, unfrozen chicken breast. You can take, 30 minutes and pound out a bunch of these and then freeze them already pounded out and you're ready to go for whatever recipe you want to use them for. So I like to just leave them in the plastic like this after I pounded them out. So let me show you how I do it. You're not wanting to hit this too hard. We don't want to go through the meat. And it will get a little bit tenderized, but we still need this to stay intact because this is what we're wrapping our filling in. So we're just gonna pound it out. And I like to go in a circle, go around in a circle. And that way I get an even pounding all the way around. While I'm hitting it, I'm just gently pulling it a little bit. And I want it to pretty much double or triple in size and get very thin without breaking through the flesh. Okay, there's our first one. And I'll hold it up so you can see how you can see the light through it. And it's very thin, So that's perfect, that's how big we want it. So you can just pound out a bunch of those if you want to. Just fold the plastic over and you can just stack them up and throw them in the freezer if you want to. We're gonna use all of ours, so I'm just gonna set it aside. So I will meet you back here after I've pounded them all out. And you see that took me about, I don't know, 1.5, maybe 2 minutes to do it. So it goes pretty quickly. Okay, I'm all finished pounding them out. Took me about 5 or 6 minutes. And you can see I've got some nice layers here. And we're all ready to go. So let's move on to the filling. The filling for this recipe is cream cheese. And since I'm doubling this, I'm going to do a whole brick of cream cheese. That's 8 ounces. And I have a stand mixer, so I'm just gonna use my paddle attachment and put it in my stand mixer. If you don't have a stand mixer, you can use a hand blender if you want, or you can just go old-fashioned, manual, and use a spoon to break up your cream cheese and mix it up. I also like to just scrape off some of the bits there. Try and get every little bit. You spend good money for your ingredients, and so don't waste any of it by throwing it away. Now, I had these all cut in half because I thought I was just gonna do the 2 chicken breasts, but then I realized I had more chicken breast. And these have been sitting out for a little bit, so they are a little bit soft, and they should mix up well. And while those are mixing up, you can prep the rest of the ingredients. Now, the next thing we're gonna do is the basil. And if you're fortunate enough to have fresh basil where you live, awesome. It's not really in season here, and so I bought some from the store. And we're gonna use quite a bit of basil. So I like these packs because they come pre-washed and ready to go. You've got all these nice leaves. Oh my gosh, the fragrance is amazing. And so I'm just gonna take them, I'm gonna break the stem off there just a little. I just want the leaves, and I like to just pile them up nicely. That way I can roll it up and chop it up just fine. Now, if you have a little blemish on your leaf like this, that probably means that it got a little too cold. Basil does not like the cold at all. And so if you're gonna have extra basil and store it, I highly recommend leaving it on the stalk like this and putting it in a glass of water and just setting it on your countertop or in a warmish place. Usually if you leave these in too cold of a refrigerator, they will get really dark. They start to turn black because they don't like the cold. So I'm just gonna keep piling here. And I'll probably do this in a couple of batches. And the nice thing is all of these little tiny leaves at the top, you can just pluck those off and throw them right in the bowl if you want. Those don't require any chopping. Now, this one, oh, there it is. See this right here, this little bit? That is the flower starting to form on this basil. That can be quite bitter. I don't know that you would want to eat that part, so I would discard that, but the leaves are still good. So you just roll it up like this and do a nice tight little roll and take your sharpened knife, keep the tip on the cutting board, and you're gonna start pretty close to where you are, tucking your fingers in, and then push forward. And then pull the knife back, keep pushing forward. Notice how the tip never leaves my cutting board. And I'm just doing a seesaw motion. And as you cut, you can move your fingers back, keeping them nice and tucked. And this is how you get a nice ribbon. And any large leaf herb that needs to be chopped up like this, you can stack it up, or even like spinach or whatever you can do. And then you get, look at that. Isn't that pretty? You get all these nice ribbons. Okay. And if you want them chopped more confetti-like, you can just take the knife and just chop them up a bit like that too, if you'd like. So I'm gonna do, the recipe calls for a 1/3 cup of chopped basil. So that's about a 1/3 cup right there. So I'm gonna do a little bit more and I'll meet you back here when I'm done. All right, we have all of our basil chopped up. So let's talk about our garlic. So this recipe calls for quite a bit of garlic. Some of them I already have peeled. I wanted to show you how I peel them. There are lots of gadgets out there for peeling and chopping and mincing and all that kind of stuff with garlic. But honestly, if you have a good knife, you really don't need much else. So there's a couple ways you can go about this. Some of these long skinny pieces, I just gently twist them a little and that paper wrapper comes right off. On some of the bigger ones, oh, that looks like a couple, oops. There's quite a few there, stick together. The closer you get to the middle, obviously you get more. So it's not hard. Most garlic is fairly dried out, and so you can get the peels off pretty easily. So another way to get your peel off is to simply hold the blade away from you. You're gonna hold it flat over the top of the garlic. Smash it with the back right here of your hand. And you'll notice that the peel comes right off. Just one little piece right there. You're good to go. You can do that with all of them. And it almost takes less time to do this than if you pull out all the gadgets. Just smash them. Be assertive. Don't be timid. You don't want timid garlic smashers. You just pull that paper off. There you go. Now, if you have a few little blemishes on your garlic, you can just gently cut them off. That's not a big deal. I'll show you how to do that. Even if they're smashed, it's okay. So these garlics, for whatever reason, seem to have quite a few. So I'm just gonna take my knife. So there's a little blemish. I'm just gonna chop that part off, and got a little one here. Take it off. Just like that. Got a little one here. I got all this garlic from Costco, and I've noticed that my Costco garlic tends to have these little blemishes on them more than if I just buy the loose garlic from the grocery store. So I don't know that I'm gonna be buying garlic from Costco anymore. I haven't been super impressed with it. The other thing you can do if you feel like it is if the stem is particularly woody, you can chop that off. That's okay. Some of them are kind of, they can be quite woody, and so you don't want that in your recipe, whatever you're making. So you just take the end off. Now, the upside to using a garlic press or something like that is that it's not going, you don't have to, chop it off like I'm doing here. So I'm just gonna pile my garlic up and just start chopping, just like this. And we're just gonna mince the whole thing up. Okay, so here we have the garlic. It's all chopped. It literally took me a minute to do it, 30 seconds, whatever. You can coarse chop it for this recipe. It doesn't need to be all finely smashed into a pulp or anything like that. So we'll set that aside and we'll move on to our julienned sun-dried tomatoes. The last ingredient for our filling are the julienne tomatoes, or sun-dried tomatoes. So I buy them in a little 7-ounce jar like this. They come in all different sizes and brands and all that kind of stuff, but make sure they get packed in extra virgin olive oil. You're gonna use that oil, strain it off, and for this quantity, I'm using a whole jar. It would be half a jar if it was just a couple of chicken breasts. But this is what we're gonna saute the chicken in. So you wanna save that yummy, flavorful oil. Don't throw that away. So I just strain it off, and then I've got my nice julienne sun-dried tomatoes. Now, I want these chopped just a little bit finer, so I'm just gonna give them a rough chop like this. Just go through them. That way they'll mix in with the cream cheese just a little bit easier. Just like that. Tucking those fingers under so you don't chop the end of your fingers off. Because believe me, that's no fun. There isn't a person out there that's worked in a professional kitchen that hasn't chopped some part of their finger at some point. It's just part of the territory. All right, so there's our rough chop. Just give them a little bit more, and we're good to go. We can put those back in. So that's a whole jar, a whole 7-ounce jar of sun-dried tomatoes with the oil strained off. All right, so now we're gonna mix up our cream cheese mixture. So let's see how that comes together. All right, here's our mixer. I've got the cream cheese in there. Now you want it to get nice and fluffy and broken up. So that's what we have here. Hopefully you can see that pretty well. And then we're just gonna start adding our ingredients. So the first thing I'm gonna add is the garlic. And then we're gonna add the sun-dried tomatoes. And the last thing I'm gonna add is the basil. Give it a good high-powered zip. And that's it, you've got your mixture. Okay, all we're gonna do now is spread our filling on our pounded out chicken breast, and I'll show you how I roll them up. So just take a couple tablespoons of the mixture. We're gonna spread it out. Remember, we've got, for this recipe anyway, six chicken breasts, so we wanna make sure, or we've got six halves, I should say. So we'll just put it on there. There's so much flavor packed into this that that you can really, you don't have to put a whole lot on. So I'm just gonna spread it like this. Not quite over the whole thing, just like that, okay? And then what you wanna do is use the plastic wrap to your benefit. Now the first thing I like to do is fold over my edges, just like that. And the plastic wrap is perfect because it pulls right away from the chicken. So I'm just gonna gently kind of fold over, and that gives me kind of a burrito quality if you think about it like that. And then we're just gonna gently roll it up like this. We're not looking for a super tight roll, but as you can see, I'm just gently pulling this forward, just like so. And if you don't want this craggly end, you can do the same thing. You can just fold it over a little, and that gives you a nice even edge there to work with. And then you just roll it right up. And then you can take it, roll it right onto your plate. And there's our first chicken roll, okay? And you don't even have to touch it with your fingers, so you can keep your hands fairly clean as well. So there's our first chicken roll. And when we put it in the skillet, it's gonna be seam side down when we initially saute them in the pan. And that'll be our next step. So I'm gonna finish rolling up the rest of these. I'll show you how to do one more. And you can even, take your pile and just put it in front of you and just pull away the next layer like that and spread your mixture on. Oh, I got a little too much for that one. That's a lot. So just spread it out like you did before. Nice even layer as best you can. Doesn't have to be perfect. We just want some filling in there. Okay. There we go. And then you can just do the same thing. Just take that bottom layer and just fold it in just a little to give you a nice flat edge on both sides. Now this one, see how this one kind of peeks out a little bit more? So I'm gonna fold that one in quite a bit there. Just like that. And then you can take your end and give it a nice even end down there. There we go. And then we're gonna start rolling. Now the marvelous thing about this particular technique is that you can put whatever your imagination comes up with for the filling, just whatever you think sounds good. And I have a recipe for chicken enchiladas, and the chicken becomes the tortilla. So we'll go ahead and put that on the plate. Not exactly the same size, but it's okay. Maybe you have a child that wants a smaller one and an adult that wants a bigger one. The other thing you can do is prepare these and then put them in the freezer, and they're ready to go when you want to use them. Just freeze them right up, and then you can take them out, thaw them, and cook them up when you're ready to have it. And like I said, you can put all kinds of filling in this, whatever flavors you like. Feta with spinach and garlic. Like I said, you can do enchiladas, cheese, kind of a deconstructed enchilada where the chicken becomes the tortilla, and put enchilada sauce and cheese and green chilies on the inside, even some green olives if you like that sort of thing, and freeze them all up, and you've got dinner ready, easy to go when you're ready to have dinner, and you need a night where you can just pop something in the oven and forget about it. You can also put these in those aluminum square pans, those little casserole pans. I think they even have ones that come with a lid, even like a lasagna pan, and you can just put that whole thing in the oven and cook it up, and then make your sauce, which I'll show you how to do at the end. So I'm gonna finish filling these, and then we'll get to cooking. All right, we have our 6 chicken rolls ready to go. Let's start cooking. A lovely pot for working with for this particular dish is this cast iron casserole, Dutch oven style. I love it because it has a lid. It's a nice shallow saute pan, so it's perfect for this kind of cooking. Because what we're gonna do is saute these in the reserved tomato olive oil, and then we're going to remove them from the pan. We're gonna make a sauce, put them back in the pan, and then slide them in the oven for 10 to 15 minutes so that they can heat through totally, and that sauce can thicken, and they'll be ready to go. So let's start with our olive oil. And hopefully you can hear that sizzle. And we're waiting for it to get nice and hot. It'll take a nice sheen. And then we'll gently start putting in our chicken rolls. let them saute for about 4 or 5 minutes on the first side, you're going to see that the chicken is gonna look cooked. I don't know if you can see it right here, but it'll start to look cooked all the way up the sides, and that's what we're looking for. We want it to look cooked, and once it reaches that nice brown stage underneath, it'll release from the pan. If you tried to move these around right now, they would stick to the bottom of the pan because they haven't totally seared those protein strands yet. So we're gonna let them cook. I'm not gonna put the lid on at this point because I don't wanna steam the meat. I just want it to saute. Now, this isn't great for video because you can't really see it cooking, but if you have one of these screens, they are fantastic because they help prevent overspray when you're sauteing something. And it's particularly nice because then you don't get it all over your arms, those little burn blowouts from things popping and cracking. But I'll go ahead and take it off so you can see the food cooking. Okay, I've sauteed them up a little bit in the pan. We're gonna deglaze the pan with some chicken stock. Make a nice sauce. And I cannot say enough good things about tomato paste in a tube. It's wonderful. We're gonna do about a tablespoon. And what we want to do is just deglaze this pan. I'm going to turn the heat up a little because I want it to come to a boil. We're going to get those chicken bits off the bottom. All those yummy brown bits. So we want this to come to a nice rapid boil. I'm going to turn the temperature up a bit. Like I said, get some of those lovely bits off the bottom. Got some little pieces of cooked chicken. While that is cooking up, I've got my chicken right here. And you'll notice I didn't salt and pepper them while I was preparing them. I'm gonna do that at this stage. And the reason I wait is because I never know how salty my chicken stock's gonna be. And I don't want it too salty, so I'm gonna salt and pepper these now. I'm gonna add just a little bit of salt and pepper to the sauce. And that should be plenty for the dish. There's so much garlic in here. That garlic is gonna give it that nice flavor. We'll get the pepper on here. And that'll be perfect. If it needs a little bit coming out of the oven, that's fine. Okay, that looks good right there. So at this point, what we're gonna do is add the chicken rolls back in. And we'll put the small ones in the middle there and build around the outside. One at the top there, and one at the bottom. Just like that. And then the lid can go on. And they are ready to go into the oven. Cook in the oven anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes, depending on how your oven heats, at about 350. And we'll pull them out and we'll see how they turn out. Okay, I just pulled it out of the oven and we're gonna let it rest for a minute. All right, just like that.
Got our chicken margarita.
Happy cooking.